Hey everybody, Dr. Greco here. We are going to spend this week talking about justice. Justice is this incredibly important biblical concept, and we're going to see that not only does Jesus talk about it, but Jesus draws from the Old Testament definition and concept of justice to teach in the New Testament. The reason this is so important is because our culture is obsessed with justice. And we as Christians, because the non-Christian culture, what some would consider liberalism or secularism, is so obsessed with justice and it has almost become an idol to them, we avoid it. But that's wrong. Because it's such a biblical concept, we as Christians, as believers, as people who know the Word, as people who want to follow God, we need to inject ourselves into the conversation so that justice can be lived out, so that truth and justice and goodness and righteousness can come from its actual source, which is God, not the feelings of man. Okay. Now, Jesus talked a lot about justice. What he was drawing on is the idea that the Old Testament talks a lot about justice. It's considered foundational. In the Old Testament, one of the foundational principles is justice. In fact, in Deuteronomy 27, there's a verse where God says, you'll be cursed if you don't live out justice. And the word that God uses for justice in that scripture is mishpat. And mishpat, or mispah, is this idea that we need to be very purposeful in enacting what we would consider righteousness or goodness. And so we make a judgment, we make a decision, and then we put it into action. And what we see is that we are often looking in our world making decisions. And God says, and I want you to make those decisions rightly. Jesus tells us a little more about that in the New Testament. And then he says, then I want you to do something with it. It's one thing to say, this is fair, that's fair, but then we have to enact justice. And in the Old Testament, what God lays out as the foundation for that is for the alien, the fatherless, and the widow. For people who can't help themselves, we purposely seek them out and show them justice, fairness, and kindness. Okay? So, big biblical concept. We're going to spend a lot of time on it this week. I can't wait to get into it. Mitzvah, purposefully showing justice to the people around you. We'll see you tomorrow for another Ministry in a Minute.